All right, everyone, we have to talk about Facebook and Instagram because, they've been basically depersoning people on behalf of their globalistic masters for a while now, but they just decided to, they're getting a little bit more bold. It was before, one person at a time boiling the frog, but the other day they decided, oh, we're going to purge dangerous people from the platform, literally using the moniker dangerous to describe them. Paul Joseph Watson, which is, it's hilarious to give him that fucking moniker. Milo Yiannopoulos and Laura Loomer. Now, whose prediction about tech censorship does this so perfectly conform to? What do all of these three particular individuals have in common? They do real world things. They're not simply, they don't just do the analysis and reporting side of things like, what I do, or maybe some other commentators like an H.A. Goodman or something. It's more like online. Much PJW, of course, and I don't think he's actually part of the InfoWars team anymore. I think he has his own thing going. I think, I could be totally wrong. Maybe he can confirm that. I don't know, because I don't really keep up with the inner workings of news platforms. But he does real-world things. Increasingly lately, he's been, sort of going out, doing that sort of thing. I think he has Instagram, too, and Instagram often, it requires being social. Why do you think I don't have one? But now, of course, he's been banned. Laura Loomer, very much sort of on-the-ground journalistic and I would say activistic stuff. Was it Pelosi's house that she went to at one point with some other people, and they camped out on the lawn briefly, and then she chained herself to Twitter HQ. So these are dissidents, basically. And Milo Yiannopoulos, he's one of the original gangsters of getting depersoned. So what they're saying is basically what these tech platforms are doing is attempting to stifle the kind of people that criticize them. And there are people that applaud this and think that it's a good thing. It's very, very interesting to see self-proclaimed liberals have no problem with the idea that someone that speaks out against what essentially amounts to a multinational, multi-billion-dollar corporation, they get banned by that corporation from utilizing those platforms largely simply because they're critical of them, and then they get depersoned and nobody has a problem with it. Oh, they're dangerous individuals. No, I think the dangerous thing is when we're letting multinational corporations deem a person dangerous and get their life ruined. I think that it is extremely dangerous to allow these corporations to label somebody wrongthink, to label them too edgy, they're not family friendly enough, they're problematic, they're a dissident, there's something wrong with them, they're a deplorable or whatever. And to get them mass banned from platform after platform to the point where they're not capable of speaking. Because it doesn't just impact them, ultimately. Paul Joseph Watson has a massive audience. If he gets banned off a platform, it affects all of his fans insofar as they interact with his content on those platforms. You are causing an era of negative feelings when you allow, again, these big corporations, they're for-profit private entities, supposedly private. I've actually got a separate video that I'll be making right after this that explains it's not entirely the case. But a technically private for-profit entity, albeit government co-opted, backed, and partnered, which is unconstitutional, by the way, basically picking and choosing what books you can read and everything. We've got to understand something, that is that the communications paradigm of the world is fundamentally, markedly different than it was even 15 years ago. The internet is where communication takes place. It takes place in the digital era. Phone has been wrapped up in it. Television has been wrapped up in it. It's the internet of totality is what we have. We've also got to stop thinking of the internet as technologically separate from these other facets. Television is basically just on demand now. Nobody watches cable. Nobody fucking cares about cable, and that's already heavily censored and strangulated anyway. Telephone. Your phone is basically an internet device at this point. The fact that it uses cellular networks, it's interacting with the same content using sort of different facets to do so, using apps and so forth. The app-based internet is even subsuming computers, which, by the way, I fucking hate. Windows 7 was fine. They didn't need to do all the app bullshit that they did with Windows 10. You could have had a non-smartphone looking fucking version. We should have seen the writing on the wall with Windows 8, which nobody remembers for a very good reason. Unless you had a touchscreen device or tablet, it didn't make any sense as an operating system. Not that 10 is much better. At least it looks kind of okay. I can use the Windows Classic Shell and XP mode or something and make it look decent. Or I can use Opera if I'm on the internet. But here's the thing. I think it is exceptionally dangerous to allow for-profit entities that essentially have a monopoly over now all human communication. Think, less than a dozen firms. Most human communication goes through at least one of them. And they all work together. They're obviously colluding with one another to do this. It isn't just, oh, well, you know, Loomer gets banned off of Facebook and Instagram for life or something. No, she's already been banned in other places too. Paul Joseph Watson's been banned from various places. InfoWars doesn't exist except as a standalone site and some alt-tech presences. And so more and more, if you want good commentary, you have no choice but to use alt-tech and to diversify your presence on these other platforms. Because like if Zuckerberg doesn't like someone, Facebook may be in decline, but Instagram is still a big thing. You think in a lot of cases the people being deplatformed on those platforms, they're not even doing anything. They've taken up, so Zuckerberg has taken up a Twitter line. Jack Dorsey's the one that invented this concept. And to a lesser extent, I'd say, well, technically Patreon did, and Jack Dorsey takes that up and then exports it to the world of tech at large. The corporations, which is what they are, have realized that it makes sense to change their TOS to allow them to ban people for off-site behavior, for anything they do in the real world, even if it's perfectly legal, even if there's nothing, you know, objectively, morally wrong with it. It's just like, hey, here I, like again with Loomer chaining herself to Twitter HQ and saying basically, you know, censorship must stop. It's very funny that, you know, the natural reaction, I guess, by these corporations is more censorship. And they're doing it to our fans and audiences as well. I would say that's concerning to me as a content creator, seeing people that I interact with get banned on these platforms. They're like, yeah, you know, I got banned off YouTube. This is my new account and stuff. And it happens to people that create content that I happen to want to watch. It personally affects me in my day-to-day life when I can't access that content in a reasonable manner on sites that I tend to use and that I find useful. And it affects other people, like if I was banned off one of these platforms. I don't think anyone would care if I got banned on Facebook because I don't do jack shit there. I don't think I'd care either. I will say the one saving grace here is that Zuckerberg's platforms are the least important of all the big tech sites. But you think about it. Here are the tech giants. You've got Zuckerberg, who's basically standalone. Facebook and Instagram are both his. Those are two of the big ones, but they're conjoined. You've got Google, which has, not only does it have YouTube and Gmail, which is one of the big email hosts. It's like, you know, you lose that, you lose a lot of shit. Not only does it have that, but Blogspot would definitely count. Definitely a huge control over the sort of app sphere, you could call it. One of the two gatekeepers along with Apple, which is another of these big tech firms over the entire smartphone world. And then you have Amazon and eBay and a few others that basically, you know, all e-commerce, all communication, online banking, PayPal, Patreon, and so forth. Crowdfunding, GoFundMe would be part of that. About a dozen companies control virtually the whole internet, or they co-opt it. And other even independent sites, they use all sorts of things that were developed by those companies and come with strings attached. What we need is more internet independence. It's very funny, again, to see people who are supposedly liberal and educated and we hate hate and we don't like the idea of people being abused. Okay, well then why are you encouraging billion-dollar entities to abuse people because you have a topical disagreement with them politically? You don't even, a lot of these people that are praising such moves don't even know anything about these people, except what they read in a BuzzFeed article. But these people are competitors of BuzzFeed and groups like that. That's the whole point. We are the opponents of the legacy media. Just because a news article says something about one of us doesn't make it true, and that's, you know, the whole point. And as predicted 2 years ago, they're going after people who do real-world things predominantly. And I would say alt-tech is part of that when they get like deplatformed and so forth. That's because they're developing something that's separate, that competes with these corporations. We've gotten to the point where these companies are working together to prevent and exclude all competition. That's a monopoly. It's also illegal under existing US law, which I'll get into in my next video. It's a trust. Oddly enough, it's exactly what the progressives initially fought against 100 years ago. Trust busting and breaking apart monopolies was basically the linchpin of the progressive movement under Teddy Roosevelt and under Taft. Oh, but we've got to forget all about that, I suppose. No, populism is evil. That's about all. Peace out.